So this week's episode of Dr. Stone, we get to learn quite a bit about this world, the petrification, the whole idea of where this name came from, and just where the story wants to go going forward. And that's clearly a race to see would an army of might be able to be formed quicker than an army based on science. And I think that's a really interesting concept, and just, I love what the first half of this episode did. You know it's serious when you don't get the opening of an episode until like the halfway mark of a 20-minute episode. But I am glad we got even more content with Senkuu and just before everything kind of went into kind of the present day, so to speak, of this series, and just how he came to the conclusion of everything he did when it comes to the stone, when it comes to how to revive, because up to this point, it was pretty much left up to our imaginations. And I really appreciate the fact that they didn't go super detailed with it, but they gave us enough information that it makes sense for how this kind of revival juice and just how they can survive all these years happened without going super technical and making us feel like they're trying too hard, and in doing so, failing miserably. I think it is pretty interesting because we've seen up to this point all the characters who have been revived have had some form of like thought process throughout all those years, and you would think, how in the hell could someone's mind be active for 3,700 years? Like, that's just not possible. And you're right, it's not possible, but in the world of Dr. Stone it clearly was. But we do get to see that there's something with this shell, something with the stone that coated them that had to have been able to fuel their minds, and I think that's an interesting concept because there's something that we just don't understand about why this happened in the first place. Was it aliens? Was it just a natural disease? Was a military experiment gone wrong? We don't know, but something has happened, and it's interesting how it's basically become their greatest curse, but also their greatest doctor. As Taiju does say in this episode, it will be their Dr. Stone. Because imagine if they were able to willingly petrify someone, say they had a wound that was going to kill them, and they found a way to actually activate this petrification willingly, they could heal people and then break the stone. It would be amazing, and you could definitely just see that that's the route Senkuu would want to go. Be able to harness this curse and turn it into their greatest ally, because if they could honestly make this into their Dr. Stone, that would be amazing, because for someone like Senkuu, he no longer has stone as far as we know, so if he gets another blow to the back of his neck, how is he going to survive that? He won't. But if people still have that, they can actually use that as being a very interesting cure. Even if they have a little bit of stone left on their leg, why not leave it there, just in case maybe you are going to lose your leg from a wound and you have that, it heals everything around you. It's interesting how they went into so much detail surrounding this whole Dr. Stone mechanic, but at the same time, they leave it open enough for your imagination so you can piece together the smaller details that really would be kind of silly to go into detail within this series, because then you'd be like, okay, this is just trying to be way too realistic, and this is Dr. Stone we're talking about. We don't need all these details, so I quite appreciate that. But it is interesting how not only did he come to the conclusion of how to basically unlock everything, because, I mean, he looks at the cave, he notices the acid, and then he just kind of starts piecing together in rapid succession. So alongside the viewer, you're like, okay, this is how he came to this realization. But it is fun just seeing, because as of right now, we're kind of in war territory, trying to race to build armies and things like that. So it's interesting how we just get that simplistic but very crucial information for the first half of this episode, and kind of just how similar the situations were, where you have someone like Senkuu just begging Taiju to wake up, believing that he would be active all those years, same as him, but then you go back to the present day, and then you see Taiju doing the same thing and begging him to come alive, and you can really just get a sense of bond there, that it's just such a close group of friends right there, that no matter what happens to them, even if someone dies, even if someone is covered in stone and you don't have the answers to why this happened, they truly believe in one another, that they won't go at this alone, and they can't survive this alone, and they have to be together. I think that's super important, because this is a relationship that I've been complimenting since episode 1 that easily could have been toxic, manipulative. You know, you have the smart guy, you have the seemingly dumb guy, but they made it into something that was really just sweet and actually feels like a genuine friendship. And because of that, someone like Taiju, who in most series would be put down, ridiculed, and just made fun of for not being the sharpest tool in the shed, because he's actually supported by someone who's so intelligent like Senkuu, he has moments where he gets to be intelligent because he's not afraid to speak his mind, and in doing so we get sequences where he mentions the whole Dr. Stone mechanic, and you're like, holy shit, that's genius. Why didn't we think of that? And I think that's why this relationship in just Cass is so perfect in the way that it is. When it came to the whole like revolutionary stuff and kind of building their army, I think it's interesting the idea of putting two of your closest friends back into the viewpoint of your enemy, your antagonist. And I think that's actually pretty genius, because as far as Tsukasa knows, the person who was his threat is dead. It would totally make sense for them to come back to him even if they hate him, because how would they survive by themselves? It actually does make a whole lot of sense, but I do like the idea that it isn't an easy thing for them because they might be gone for months, years, who knows, they may never see each other again. They will obviously, but from their point of view, you would understand the fear, especially from someone like Taiji being like, I can't believe I'm going to lose my friend for so long, and this would be the first time they've been apart ever since waking up. And I think that's really emotionally gripping, and it just kind of leads to like the future of the series is so damn bright, especially because we have someone like Senkuu who's now coming into contact with other people who have woken up, and seemingly is someone who was born into this new stone world as she's younger and doesn't understand, like, basically Senkuu is a wizard. From her eyes, you would think she was pulled from the Stone Age, which they technically are in the Stone Age, but you get my point. So it's going to be interesting to see how Senkuu can build basically an army that will probably, because if there's more people who are born into this world, has never seen science, this is going to be their god. This is going to be someone they will follow into battle and not some random guy with brute strength, because holy shit, look at this. I could definitely see Tsukasa gaining a lot of support by people who were a part of the modern world, seeing a strong leader, you'd want to follow that. But for people who were born into this world, or just people who are scared not knowing what to do and seeing someone so intelligent, it'll be interesting to see the two sides and what they can raise and who will come out on top by the end, and if by the time this is all said and done, will they be able to find common ground and shared interests and no longer have to fight and work together towards a modern civilization. That'll be pretty interesting. But this episode, it just really feels like Dr. Stone has been great since the first episode, but it just keeps finding more and more ways to improve on the cast relationships, how it has that emotional pull, the music when it needs to just gets you incredibly hyped up, especially near the end of the episode. You just feel like someone on this epic quest where you could easily die. You take one wrong step and it's all over, but at the same time, you kind of feel like Senkuu and you're like, this is going to be okay. We feel like we have a goal, we have a destination. It's a matter of time, but I think we can do this. And I think that's just kind of the brilliance of Dr. Stone, is how the cast gets into this role so perfectly that it feels very silly at times. It feels so ridiculous at times, but at the same time, there's this grand, really serious idea of where it wants to go, and it kind of balances between absolute ridiculous, as seen by just the many shots that just leave you laughing and like, holy shit, this is pulled from some classic cartoons here, look at their eyes going through their head, but at the same time there's some real emotional relationships being formed and just goals overall that you feel like it's both the most serious and ridiculous show you can watch this season, and I really appreciate that. This episode is just pleasant. Now I know this is around the area where a lot of manga readers fell in love with Dr. Stone. I've been saying it since episode 1. I've loved this series. So of course this is just getting better for me, but it just feels like this cast of characters, because of this very unique Dr. Stone setting, we're just seeing just the idea of a story be explored so just unique. Honestly, Dr. Stone feels like one of the most unique anime I've seen in the past few years, because when have you seen something like this occur? When you look at how the cast is being explored, the cast relationships, the comedy and the serious, yeah, we've seen that before, but the idea of exploring a setting such as this, especially the idea that there could be people who have woken up before someone like Senkuu, and maybe there's been generations upon generations, a small group of people who have bred and things like that. There's so many ways that you can explore this story and cast of characters, both with characters who are frozen and characters born into this new world. It's going to be interesting. There's the whole idea that only swallows as well as humans were petrified. Why is that? Why is there only one type of bird, and why is it only humans that were basically having to deal with this curse? And what if they do master the Dr. Stone mechanic? Would they be able to use that same petrification on an animal? What if they train animals to be part of their kind of crew? They get a massive slash in their leg. Would they be able to master that petrification? There's so much we don't know about the mechanics to this series, and that's what I love. There's enough detail that we get a grasp on how people can survive deadly blows, or how they can be pieced back together, or how they can't be pieced back together based on certain circumstances, but there's still such a wide variety of ways to explore this weird curse and phenomena that we could honestly see this lasting this entire series, where we keep learning more and more about the mechanic while still feeling like we know so much about it that if they chose to not explore anymore, we could be satisfied with what we have. And I think that's incredibly important before a series literally titled Dr. Stone, and the entire mechanic is based on this stone. It's really interesting how we can just do so much more with it, but at the same time, literally nothing else with it, and just what we already know and love about it, and it would be perfectly fine. This is a series with honestly an unlimited amount of paths that it could follow over its course. Obviously, I'm incredibly excited to see where the whole revolutionary army and just the brute force army is going to go, but there's still so much more to do after that war is all said and done, and where it could go from here. But honestly, this was an incredible episode, definitely the best of the series so far. It's getting better and better, as manga readers have been anticipating for a while that this was the point that they were like, holy shit, when this happens, it's just going to get crazy. The real Dr. Stone begins, but Dr. Stone's been great since episode 1, but it definitely is just getting better and better with each passing episode and just overall arc that we're following. But for anyone who did watch, what do you think of this week's episode of Dr. Stone? Favorite moment? Where do you think it's going to go with episode 7 next week? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you did enjoy this video though, be sure to drop a like and also hit that subscribe button if you haven't been new. So until next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.